All right, we're going to talk about the Lemegeton, the Clavicle Solomonus, the Lesser Key of Solomon. It has 5 books in it. You know, it closes. It's a I guess a closed system. Now, I'm going to talk to you about what I've researched, what I know, what I've practiced, my interactions with these spirits. But in this video, I'm going to talk about how it's deconstructed through the psyche, right? Now, the 72 spirits are constraint. They're a constraint and a command in this. There's 5 parts, 5 books in this. There's the Ars Goetia or Goetic. It's like mixed spirits with the elemental, planetary. And then none of these books I've done. Only the Ars Goetia, the 72. Okay, the Ars Paulina, which is the angels, which has the hours, the days, the zodiac. There's the Ars Alamadel, which is the angelic work, and it has like 4 elements or 4 elemental altars in it. And then the Ars Notoria, which is divine knowledge, purification. Now, we're going to talk about the history of this, okay? Now, the first printed publication was in 1904. It was edited by S.L. McGregor Mathers, okay? Later, it was revised by Aleister Crowley, okay? Some people pronounce him Crowley. I don't know. I've actually seen him in my dreams before. It was kind of funny, but I'll tell you about that some other time. Now, he did that in 1911, okay? If you don't know who Aleister Crowley is, you should research and you should go and find out. He's an occultist, but he really pushed the boundaries of it, okay? He was considered to be the most evilest, wickedest man. But anyways, so before the 20th century, it was never like really officially published. It was only copied. The progression moved from chaos to meditation, order. Now let's break down the word the word. So le is the lesson, me is the melody, get like ge is getting, and the ton is like tone. So if you break down that word, there's actually like the lesson of a melody on the tongue. I thought that was interesting. So it actually a lot of people start off working with the Ars Goetia, and it wasn't really actually King Solomon who personally wrote down this and binded demons in a historical sense. This is what happened. Okay, now how Solomon's story was created was later writers and scribes, Jewish Christians, Islamic traditions attributed magical authority to Solomon, because in biblical lore, Solomon was the wisest king, okay? And he associated with command over spirits, especially later in the legends. Texts were written down in his name to give them legitimacy. This practice was called, I'm going to try to pronounce, persupigraphy. I don't know. I saw it in my brain. Don't know. Anyways, so Solomon bounded the spirits in these like vast vessels, and they were using mystical symbolism, not historical claim, right? Now, what Solomon binding demons, what it really means symbolically and psychologically. Okay, we're going to break all that down. So Solomon, he governs over the sovereign consciousness, the divine authority. The demons is the chaotic force, the instincts, the drives, and the knowledge. Now, where the binding comes in is the containment, the structure, the law to command over them. Okay, so in other words, I guess, the myth says order can constrain chaos if it knows the right why and how scribes did it, through protection, claiming divinity over authority, in a religious world back then. Now the structure is framed magic as a command, not worship. Okay, The transmission is allowed. Older pagan astrological and the spirit lore confirms to survive inside the Bible, the biblical shell. This, where the legend likely came from, is the Testament of Solomon in his 1st and 3rd century CE, a mystic narrative text. Okay, later medieval writers turned the story into a method. This is where all this came from. Now, by the 1600s, the story had become like a ritualized instruction manual, the Ars Goetia, or the Goetia, however you want to pronounce it. Right? So Solomon didn't literally bind 72 demons. Scribes used his image as a symbol of absolute authority. The binding is a mystical, symbolic, and psychological. Now, the system is about self-mastery, okay, through through this. Now, if we talk about Solomonic Goetia, like the world view, there's a core posture, authority over forces. Spirits, like I said, can be constrained, bound, and sealed in this, all of the instinctual parts and the chaos within us. The magician stands alone outside, above the forces that are invoked. And power comes from law, names, and the hierarchy, and command. Chaos is something that can be contained and controlled, right? But through the psychological lens, the ego uses structure, language, and discipline to drive. Sorry. My phone keeps glitching on me. Now, the first monotheistic framework, where order must be dominated over disorder. So now, if we bring the Egyptian worldview of this, because I'm going to do some comparisons, the core posture for them is integration of the forces. Gods and demons and chaos beings are cosmic functions. Even destruction forces like Set, Sekhmet, and Apep have absolutely necessary roles. The power becomes alignment. Balance, who is Ma'at, is Egyptian, and knowing one's place, right? Ma'at is order and harmony. Chaos is transformed, not eradicated. Okay, you can't. Now, the instinct of the shadow and the power are assimilated into self without binding. Okay, versus integration as inner work. Now, what the binding does, it creates distance from the force. It's useful for containment and control. But the risk of binding is you get repression, backlash, obsession, and projection. Now, when you integrate, it requires conscious encounter. Power becomes internal and stable. There is a risk, though. There's inflation of the ego, and it can't be hold just to one force. Now, the healthy systems often bind first, then integrate later. Get it under control first, you know? Now, they used to put the spirits in these brass vessels. Let's break down what the brass vessels are, okay? So what they really mean is symbolically. In the Goetia, the spirits said they were bound to these brass vessels, right? Why brass? What is the symbolism? Brass is the alchemical alloy, okay? You got copper, which represents Venus, desire and attraction. You got zinc and tin, which is Mercury and Jupiter. You got the mind and authority, controlled in the brass. It's controlled. It's a controlled instinct, and that's really what it is. The vessel itself is a psychic container. The spirit The spirit is not destroyed. It's held. It's contained. It's controlled. You let it out when it's necessary. Now, the force is isolated. When the force is isolated and named and contained, so it can't overwhelm the consciousness. Now we're talking about the vessel represents the mental, and the seals, the sigils, is what functions them. Now, the Goetic seals are not just names; they're compression symbols. What does the seal or sigil do? It encodes a complex force into a single glyph. It allows recognition without verbalization, and it acts as a handle for consciousness. Psychologically, the seal is a focal point. You hear Michael W. Ford talk about focal points a lot, okay, for the magicians. It gives the unconscious something stable to interface with. It prevents the mind from being flooded by raw imagery. The seal is a map reduced to a point. Okay. Now, how later occultists reinterpreted Solomon. So by the 19th and 20th century, occultists stopped talking about Solomon literally. Okay. There was a shift. The shift was Solomon equaled the magician's will. The king equaled the sovereign with consciousness. And the demons are just functions of the psyche, right? Now, the rituals were technologies of self to command. Like, for example, Eliphas Levi, or I don't know if I ever pronounce his name right, or Eliphas. Well, Solomon was master over equilibrium. The Golden Dawn, spirits, astral force, were devils. Crowley, interaction with the subconscious. And the sentient and Luciferian views of Solomon became the self as God. The circle no longer is a protection from demons. It actually is a containment of the ego. So it does not like get out, you know. Okay, so yeah. I'm going to talk about my experiences with, I haven't worked with all of them, but I have worked with many of them. And do I believe that they live outside of us? Yes and no. You know, have I seen them? Yes. But once again, it's all subjective. I haven't, well, anyways, we're going to talk about that after. So I'm going to just talk about I'm going to talk about the hierarchy of the demons in a, you know, psychological breakdown. And after I do all that, I'm going to explain some of their roles. But I'm also, if you guys go back to my videos from like years ago, I do have videos of me having the experience with them as a force outside myself, okay? And how it played a role in my life and how they changed. But I'm still gonna break it down a little bit right now and talk about how each demon represents specific parts of the psyche and the drive, or the capacity for it. Okay, when it's unconscious, it controls the person, but when it's consciously engaged, it can be integrated or master parts of the psyche, right? So we got the 72 demons as psyche functions. You got your kings, okay, the core it's the core ruling, the complexities of identity, your ego, your structure, authority, your worldview. The dukes, emotional regulation, your mood, your memory, your imagination. Okay, hierarchy. The princes, ambition, the strategy, why that word, the influences and the social dynamics. You got your marquise, which is like the aggression, the conflict, the courage, and the confrontation parts of the psyche. Okay, you got your presidents. Now, with your presidents, you got your knowledge, analysts, your learning parts of your brain, your perspective, your perception. Now, the counts and the earls is like desires, your attachments, your attraction, your instinct. And you got knights, your impulse, rebellion, your reactions, and the raw drive. Now, their psychological role is they externalize inner conflicts so that the mind can confront them symbolically. Okay, they act as mirrors of the shadow, traits that are denied, feared, and repressed. But when working with them symbolically, it means naming them, understanding them, regulating these forces rather than being ruled by them. Okay? Because remember I said naming something gives power over it. But like, in short of what the 72 Goetic spirits can be understood, it's like a map of the fragmented self. And mastery in this context means self-command, not submission. It's bringing instinct, desire, fear, and intellect into the conscious. Into the conscious alignment. Solomonic systems teach you how to control power within your psyche. Egyptian systems teach you to become the power. You know, the brass vessels is the psychic containment, the seals, the compressed interfaces. Solomon evolved from a mystical king to a symbol of sovereign kings, represent psychologically. You know. Now, in Goetia, kings ruled legions. Psychologically, like, what does that mean? Like, ruling over the legions? Well, they dominate organizing principles of your personality. They shape your perception, your decision making, and and identifying yourself itself. When it's unconscious, they rule the person. When conscious, they can be used deliberately. You have a control on them. You know when to release your anger. It's controlled. Now let's go through some of the kings, just briefly. Baal. Okay. Let's talk about Baal. Now he's a king, and in your psyche issue thing is about social adaptation, and you know, he's traditionally he governs over invisibility, cunning, leadership, but like the psychological function is the ability to shift personas. So, you know, we've seen this within people. They can change. Social camouflage, strategic ambiguity. I can camouflage within groups. I'm a number 9 too, so I'm very, very well, I can fit in anywhere. When it's integrated, emotional intelligence, adaptive leadership, and reading power dynamics. When he's unintegrated, you got a person that has fragmented identity. They have manipulation, and they lose their authentic self. Oh my God, I got such pasty mouth. Okay, when you start to look at things like this, then when you look at somebody, you can use this and be like, oh, you can see people in this way. It's so much easier in life when you can look at somebody and break down their psychological issues rather than taking it personal. And you can see what's not integrated, what's fractured in their mind, and you become the observer. You're not going to become a victim of anybody's bullshit, okay? But if you come as somebody who is observing the human psyche and human evolution, you can really look at us as instruments of sorry, that's not right, not instruments. You can look at us as scientific and watching people and how they react to things because of unintegrated aspects of themselves, suppression. It's actually kind of fun, you know? Now, all right, so we just talked about King Baal, what happens when you integrate correctly, and what happens when it's unintegrated in the mind. So I'm gonna talk about Paimon, Belith, and another one, I think. if it comes back up. But let's go into King Paimon and let's see. King Paimon is about cognition and speech and command. Traditionally, he governs over the knowledge, arts, and sciences. I love King Paimon. Now, psychological function, what happens? He's articulation of thought, internal hierarchy of ideas, meaning making through language. Okay, that's how he communicates, or when properly integrated. Now you're going to get clear thinking when he's integrated, persuasive communication, philosophical depth, unintegrated, mental domination, intellectual arrogance, and talking over and understanding. Okay, now let's talk about belief. Belief, desire and emotional gravity. Now he causes love, psychological function, attraction, bonding, emotional pull, libido in the broad sense, Now, when belief is integrated, you're going to have healthy intimacy, emotional magnetism, and erotic presence. Now, what do you think is going to happen when he's unintegrated? You're going to get obsession, emotional dependency, okay, manipulative attachments, right? This is huge. Person, okay, he reveals hidden things. So psychological function for him, he's gonna have like an X-ray precision, okay, perception. Sorry, he's gonna have X-ray perception, instinctual truth, intuitive foresight. Okay, when he is integrated, you're going to have strategic clarity, psychological insight, pattern recognition. Unintegrated is going to be the opposite: paranoia, hyper suspicion, critical worldview. I know those types of people. God. Now Asmodeus, we know he governs love and lust and the drive. So in the traditional, he's going to teach math, lust, but his psychological function is focused on desire and a drive to act upon it, build, and conquer. When Asmodeus is integrated, discipline, fueled by passion, very powerful force, creative force, erotic vitality. Okay, when Asmodeus is unintegrated, you have compulsions, addictions, self-sabotage through excessive stuff, and madness in a metaphysical view. So let's talk about corruption. So a corruption occurs when the ego identifies with the intelligence instead of containing it. One function of consciousness dominates over others, right? I guess some examples would be like desire without boundary, obsession, knowledge without grounding, dissociation, right? Power without ethics, inflation. Now, madness is a loss of hierarchy within. Okay, why they appear dark. Why do the spirits dark? Why they're dark? Because the dark arises from separation. They represent becoming rather than being. They thrive in individuality, not unity. And light seeks to return, dark seeks to differentiation. I don't say that word right. But both are very necessary. Okay. Now, my final thesis, I guess, of metaphysical thesis on the 72 Goetic intelligences, which they're intelligence. Okay, this is a system that works. Is the autonomy of self-directed becoming. So they are powers of individualization, catalyst of transformation, and teachers through friction. And they test, okay? They test your will. They test your identity. They test your self-honesty, right? So in a sense, the Goetia is not about controlling demons, but learning learning which parts of yourself you must never allow to rule unchecked. Yeah, that's really what I'm going to say about that. When you start to step out, because you can get totally wrapped in the experience of working with these forces, because they communicate with all your senses, your touch, your sense, your psyche, your emotions. They communicate with all of that. So you're going to have experiences that seem real, that are real. You're going to have knowledge. Everything, like when this stuff's integrated correctly, the person you're going to be is going to be always in becoming, but you're going to have what you want as a human being because of the way you now can perceive the human being and how the psyche works. Very interesting thought. Critical thought is huge. Anyways, that's all I got for the 72. And please share your ideas with me and comment. And if there's any videos you guys want me to talk about anything, tell me.